So the situation is, Melanie Young owns a skull, along with her husband Ray Young. They had it in '99, gave it to Lloyd Pye. He carried it for about 4 years. And then they got a replica made, which he was then carrying around that. And the original skull, the real bone skull, was given back to Melanie Young. I wrote to Melanie Young earlier this year. She still has the skull. She's still got it, according to her. But a very peculiar thing happened because she gave it to Lloyd Pye to do the investigation. He got all these tests done over many years, 14 years, lectured around it. I set up 2 talks from in the UK over the years. I knew him as a friend. But then, in round about March 2017, in other words, about 6 months ago or so, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, Melanie Young did some strange interviews. Melanie Young had been going around doing talks in 2014 herself after the death of Lloyd Pye, saying the Starchild skull has all these anomalies and we think it might be an alien, and this is the DNA test and it has all these weird bone problems and it's not hydrocephalic, because I used to work with neonatal children and we saw some hydrocephaly cases and it doesn't look like those. That's what she said in 2014 in a talk. In 2017, 3 years later, she basically comes out and says in an interview with Mel Fabregas on the Baracus show, well, actually, you know, I think it is a hydrocephalic. And the only reason why I said it wasn't was because I brought it to what Lloyd Pye was saying. And I'm thinking, really? Well, I have a recording of you from a 2009 History Channel documentary saying that you knew it wasn't hydrocephalic because if it was, the skull wouldn't exist, because hydrocephalic skulls don't fuse, the bones don't fuse, and at death they typically fall apart. Or mostly fall apart. They're very brittle because the bones haven't fused together. And yet she was saying in 2017 that she now decided it wasn't it was a hydrocephalic skull. It wasn't. There's nothing unusual about it at all. And she said this because she had been actually asked this woman called Chase Kloetsky to do another new investigation. And Chase Kloetsky in an interview basically said, well, we're going to just basically wipe the slate clean and restart the investigation from scratch. And Chase Kloetsky in an interview basically said, well, we're going to just basically wipe the slate clean and restart the investigation from scratch. Which, yeah, it kind of sounds sensible. I mean, what if the other investigation was wrong? But then think about it, maybe it's not such a good idea, because you can clearly see, for example, just by looking at the skull, the bone is 3 millimeters thick, not 9 millimeters thick. Yeah, that's not like saying, well, let's go and interview this witness because they might have got their UFO story wrong. That's physical evidence right in front of you. You need a ruler. Is that 9 millimeters? Can you tell the difference between 9 millimeters and 3 millimeters? Do you need to recheck that? Well, maybe once or twice. You know. So she essentially said in an earlier interview they were going to throw all this research away and do a complete new investigation.
So 14 years of research at Lloyd Pye's.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
They just want to wipe it clean.
Essentially, yes. And they did another investigation, and I think which took them about a year. I'm not sure quite how she got these people together. I didn't really read that much of the new investigation because I knew it was wrong. I knew that Melanie Young had contradicted herself. And you can read both if you want to sort of decide for yourself. You can read both the starchildproject.com website and I can't remember the URL of the new investigation that was allegedly done. But at the end of this investigation that she did, which apparently took several months up to a year, they said it was the skull of a human child. 4 years after the death of Lloyd Pye. Perhaps if you look at this figure of 4 years, a lot of people have short memories and they, oh, what's that Starchild skull? Oh, it was Lloyd Pye. Oh, yeah, it's really interesting. Oh, it's actually turned out to be a fake. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's why they've not done anything with it, because it was actually a fake after all. And your average coast-to-coast listener will buy into that, you know. But the problem with that is that that's not the way it works, because Melanie Young lied about Lloyd Pye. And Mel Fabregas encouraged her to sort of tell stories, like saying, oh, Lloyd wanted to make this documentary that was going to make him $1 million, and then Amy, his wife, they said that they needed some money to buy their dresses for the awards ceremony for this documentary, which hadn't yet been made. So hang on, Melanie, what you're saying then is that this documentary, which hasn't even been made, Amy, his wife, is ringing up to ask you for money to go and buy a dress for this award ceremony for a documentary that hasn't even been made yet. Is that true? Is that really true, Melanie? No, is that true? So, I mean, people, how are you going to find out if that's true or not? You can go that it's almost certainly not true because it's a ridiculous story. It might be true, but I know Amy, and I corresponded with Amy, and of course, that's not what she told me. She told me that Melanie Young had done similar things in the past. She also mentioned this Chase Kloetsky woman, of course, and said that they had this DNA test done, and I went and looked at the DNA report that they had done. Problem with the new DNA report, which basically said the same as the 2003 report, is that they didn't use ancient DNA recovery techniques. They just used, because they weren't told what the sample of bone was from, so they just treated it like your average DNA sample, from somebody in the street. They didn't know it was from a 900-year-old skull.
Straight away there.
Yeah, and I wrote to the guy and I got a response back from them. And they said that they recovered nuclear DNA, but in their report, they say they couldn't guarantee that this wasn't as a result of contamination because they didn't get any control samples. So they claim that they repeated the nuclear DNA test, which is a bit funny because the technique that was being used was a very special technique because the DNA was so different. And they claimed that it was a human child. And this was kind of a repeat of what happened in 1999. There was this other lab in Canada called the Bold Lab, which was a forensics lab, a police forensic lab. They gave this ancient DNA from the Starchild Skill, 900 years old, to this police forensic lab. And they pronounced it was the skull of a human child, from a sample which was 900 years old, which isn't really realistically possible. So Melanie Young told a few other porkies in this interview as well, which I've documented in the article, I should say, which is on my website called "The Starchild Skill: Keeping the Record Straight." And she was saying that Lloyd had tried to keep the skulls, and he was just out to make money, and that's all he was interested in. Well, hang on, Melanie, it's actually you that gave him the skull, and he's been working for 14 years, and he dies of cancer. And you're now saying that he was trying to get money out of your skull, using your skull. Really? It's crazy. And then if you go to the new investigation, this Chase Kloetsky starts talking about it, and she did an interview. I couldn't bear to listen to all of it. But she was going on about this FOXP2 gene, which was the geneticist that worked anonymously with Lloyd Carr said in 2012 that he'd discovered the FOXP2 gene. Now this is a special type of gene which is like it helps to control other genes and the way that they're produced. And everyone in the human race has a FOXP2 gene. And I think it's made up of something like 2,700 2,500. It's about 2,594, if I remember the figure correctly, base pairs. So you've got this gene, 2,594. All humans on the planet have exactly the same 2,594, whatever the number is.
So there's no variations in it?
You're allowed two variations in the whole of the human species.
Okay.
Which one, if you have one, you don't have any speech, and the other one, I think it's some terrible illness. And that when the geneticist recovered, there were enough matches in the DNA that he'd recovered to show that it was the FOXP2 gene. It was from the FOXP2 gene because that was the only sequence that would match, to the rest of the gene sequence. But when he actually studied the sequence that he got, there weren't two differences. There were 56. Or 56. So that puts it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And they worked out from those tests, which were done over about 2 years, on and off, just in the back room. This guy that was doing it, he said that he wasn't going to be identified because of the nature of the work.
Of course, yeah.
But he did get permission from the company that he worked for. He said, look, we don't mind using the facility to do this, in your slack time, but we don't tell the company. We don't know who the company is. Lloyd Carr probably does. I don't know who it was. I know the name of the geneticist. Oh, I know his first name at least. And I know that he's from the former Soviet Union originally. That's about all I know about him.
But they have the right equipment to do this properly.
Correct.
This is the important thing.
Correct. And they were claiming, Chase Coletti was claiming this guy wasn't a geneticist, he was a virologist. Yeah, well, so when you're looking at virology, what you're looking at? You're looking at gene sequences. So you do gene sequences for viruses to work out, what variations of what other viruses that are out there, So he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Chase Coletti tried to. In fact, she says in this interview that she wants to beat him up because he's putting out false information. She actually says she wants to attack this anonymous geneticist. I forget the exact quote, but if you go and listen to this interview, you'll find that's what she says.
I mean, only using the fact that they want to remain anonymous for obvious reasons as a means to discredit him.
Yes, because she says, I think that's right, because she says, oh, we've done this year-long investigation and all the scientists are named. Well, so,
as if that means anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these skeptics websites. People Lloyd talked about this guy called Stephen Novella, who wrote a debunking article about the skull in 1999. And that article that was written in 1999 is now trotted out on Wikipedia, unchanged, even though a lot more has been found out, since 1999 about the bone and the chemistry and the DNA. The original 1999 article is still trotted out as proof that that's a human child. That's on Wikipedia and other skeptic sites. They don't reference any of the new data that Lloyd showed in his talks or anything like that. Same with this Chase Coletti woman. And she actually said, going back to the FOXP2, she said, oh, the Lloyd Carr was going around talking about this FOXP2 gene. No geneticist talks about that, she says. No geneticist talks about FOXP2 gene, she says in this interview. I thought, really? So I just put in FOXP2 gene, that's all I put in Fox. And it comes up with a page from the National Institutes of Health, which is the website where all the genetic database is stored for the 100 species of animals. And it says that the FOXP2 gene is so-and-so base pairs, 2,594, whatever it is, and it's the same in everyone except it has effects on speech or something. In other words, it says exactly what Lloyd Carr says it said. It's exactly what he said in his lectures. And that's on the National Institutes of Health database website, which is where they host all the gene research, or they have a big database to do with gene research. So why is Chase Coletti outright lying? I think that gives you a measure that she's lying so obviously, and she's just relying on the fact that nobody will go and check it. Do a simple search like I did, which proves that she is a liar.
And this is. I mean, it's disinformation in your face.
Yeah, it is.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I've looked at a bit of this, and Melanie Young, she's, like you said, the way she's speaking about it is totally different than when Lloyd was alive and doing his research. I mean, she's even read somewhere she was saying that when Lloyd was alive and the Starchild Skill project, they would give her a back burner and not mention her, but yet Lloyd Carr always mentioned her as a
correct.
So she's lying there as well.
Lied about that. She was, that's right. It's another one I forgot to mention. That she said that Lloyd tried to downplay that she was in. Yeah, I've got a picture from Lloyd's lecture. I've got to do a whole video. It's a stupid thing for her to say, because not just the lectures I've recorded. Other people have been in exactly the same position that I have and recorded lectures at conferences. Put them on YouTube. He was saying it for 10 years. You could probably find 50 lectures by Lloyd Carr where he shows a picture of her saying that she owns it. She's the owner. Oh, nobody knows who I was.
El Paso, Texas, February 18th, 1999. Ray and Melanie Young introduced Lloyd Carr to the Starchild Skull. Now, where are Ray and Melanie? I know they're here. I can't see with these lights. That's Ray and Melanie right there. They're the owners of the Starchild Skull, and they are the ones who gave me the job to do something with it.
So, next slide. Ray and Melanie, again, all these people in El Paso, Texas, Melanie, Ray, obviously, and Melanie had been a neonatal nurse, as I said, and she took one look at it and she says, it's not a human deformity. That is too light, it's too symmetrical, it doesn't look anything like a human, it doesn't have human anything, this is not a human deformity.
He wasn't that comfortable with him either. So he and his wife kept him for 5 years, and they found a younger couple, ironically named Ray and Melanie Young, this pair, Ray and Melanie Young of El Paso, Texas. And they thought Melanie and Ray would be okay with it because Ray is an electrical engineer working for the power company there, and Melanie had been a neonatal nurse for about 20 years. So Melanie was very familiar with and comfortable with human deformities. So they had friends, next slide, Ray and Melanie Young of El Paso. All these people live in El Paso. Ray and Melanie, Melanie had been a neonatal nurse for about 15 years working with, children. And so she knew a lot about deformity. She had seen a lot of deformity. She had studied a lot about deformity. So and when they asked, would you take this one skull that's normal and the other one is deformed, would you be okay with that? And she said, yeah, sure.
I read that and I didn't have to check. I knew it because I've looked at some of Lloyd Carr's speeches and talks, and you only have to look at one or two to know it's so easy. She's lying,
Yeah. And then that again becomes a difficulty. Why would she lie?
Yes, that's
particularly as the owner of, and this is an extreme case because she is the owner of the school. It's different for somebody like Kloetsky to lie because she's just a commentator. She's not the owner. She didn't initiate the investigation, but Melanie Young did. So the initiator of the investigation is now lying, not only about what she said in 2009, but as we've discussed about Lloyd Carr. So why is this? How does that happen?
Do you think that Chase Kloetsky has kind of influenced a little bit, a lot?
A little bit. I don't know how much, but what we can say is that if you go and look at Chase Kloetsky's website, this woman who did the new Starchild, allegedly coordinated the new Starchild Skill investigation, she's done training programs for the US military.
So could she be a plant, maybe?
Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, it's speculation, but it
says on her website that she'd done some type of training for US military personnel of some. I forget. It says what it is on her website. She doesn't keep it a secret. I forget exactly the nature of it. But that might not even be significant. The significant thing is that we can prove that she's lied.
Yes.
And that Melanie
It
Young
doesn't take long.
No,
it doesn't take long to suss that.
And so, what that means to me is that this is important. As with the 9/11 book, this is important because to me, I will say that this isn't from around here. It's not. This isn't from Earth. It's not from Earth. I don't think. I mean, of course, people will try and pin you down. More open-minded people say, well, you can't say it's not from Earth because it could be just a race of beings that lives on the Earth underground or something, or because this is 900 years old, so it might have lived at 900 years in some, sort of dark corner of Mexico somewhere, in a cave system or something, and it died out then and it's never been seen again. So it might be some other weird type of human, but as a geneticist said, who's an anonymous geneticist, he said it's a completely different genetic line-up from Homo sapiens. He thinks it evolved in a completely non-intersecting way with humans. That's the way he put it. So it's not a mammal. It does not like. I haven't got a bone like mammals have got bones. All mammalian bone is different. So, and I think, Richard Hall and I have talked about this in that. So this skull has been known about since at least 1998 when Melanie Young had it. Why didn't some black ops person, break into Lloyd Carr's car or Melanie Young's house and nick it? In 1999 or 2000 or any of the intervening time. Why wasn't this taken away and mysteriously stolen? Why was it permitted to be spoken about for such a long time, and why have they now kind of tried to debunk it? That interests me. And what Richard Hall and we've wondered about whether they were trying to use this to see. They just kind of let it go. They let it go into the community and see where it went, see how people reacted to it. And much as I've said with 9/11, like Jim Mars, he doesn't accurately report what's in the Where Did the Towers Go book, and he didn't. Neither does David Icke. They'll mention Dr. Judy Wood, or they might mention an energy weapon or something, but they don't go into the details. I've noticed a very similar parallel with this Like Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer made a film called Sirius in 2013, 2014. And the feature in that was this little Atacama alien.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Which apparently was about 2 inches long or something. And was this a little baby alien, you know? And they had this guy called Dr. Gary Nolan in that film looking at the DNA. And if you watch what's in the film, it kind of leaves that question hanging. And Gary Nolan, I think, if you speak to him, I came across a report, I linked it to that article, I think. Yeah. I don't know if you looked at it. He basically says that the Atacama alien in the Sirius film, he thinks that's human. He ended up, he didn't know at first, but after a while he realised it was a human. And guess what he did when he realised that? He contacted Lloyd Carr. And that, he mentions that in the article as well. Right. Because he was interested in testing that. He didn't in the end, and I don't think he's done anything with it. But the Starchild Skull is not mentioned in the Sirius film. No. Lloyd Carr told me that when he was at a convention once and Stephen Greer was there, I think it was like this. I can't remember when it was. It was at least 10 years ago, I think. Stephen Greer came past his table or wherever, or past him, and he looked at it and says, "Oh yeah, it's very interesting." Walked off. And that was that. And Stephen Greer's never spoken about it yet. He's into disclosing black programs, aliens, all that stuff. Never speaks about this. I've never heard him speak about Starchild Skill. No, in fact, but most of the researchers don't. Stanton Friedman's never talked about it. Jim Mars, I don't think, has ever properly talked about it. He hasn't given an hour-long talk about it like I have, and I've only done that obviously because Lloyd's not with us anymore. And I had, as I've said, I had all these slides. So I had worked, I'd done a couple of talks with him and stuff. I had all these PowerPoints. I had about 6 or 7 that I'd got from him over the years to put on projectors and stuff, because he was using my laptop on 1 or 2 talks and my projector and stuff. So that's why I had all the material, and I just tidied it up. I haven't really put in a little bit of extra text, but it's all his stuff. I mean,
this is difficult now with him gone. Where's it going to go? Where's the?
Well, they're trying to get rid of it now. You see, this is why we wonder if it's now become a bit of a problem for them, because the DNA is becoming compelling. Yeah. And particularly that thing that Chase Kloetsky lying about FOXP2, that to me says, well, they've got to, like I was saying about, they need to protect the Jones character. They need to protect the truth about the Starchild Skill, people not understand it. So I think that FOXP2 discovery was correct. The people in the shadows know it's correct. They know that it proves that this cannot be human, not even close. So they need to keep that covered up. So they need to get it out of the way. And they're now trying to repatriate it, because I think if we read that, they want to send. They said, oh well, actually it's a human child, so that means it belongs to that group of people that lived in Mexico. So it's one of their dead. The Starchild Skull is one of their dead, so we need to return it to that tribe.
Yeah, I've read that. Yeah.
So that is a convenient way for them to get rid of it. But when they contacted the group in Mexico, the government, their local government or the local authority, whatever they call it, in their scenario, they said, no, we don't want it. It's not ours. It's 900 years old. We don't know where it came from. Exactly which town or whatever. Just forget about it. Keep it. So they wanted to get rid of it. And then the weirdest thing to finish off this bit really was Melanie Young writing to me, because she found the article that I'd written. I didn't bother writing to her. There was no point. She's obviously lied indefensibly.
Yeah.
And then she wrote to me and she said, "Oh, you could have contacted me, blah blah blah." And I said, "Well, yeah, well, okay, you've contacted me now. What? Is there anything wrong with the article? Have I got any facts wrong? Any dates wrong? Any things wrong?" And she said, "Oh, I'm begging for help." She said, "I want your help." I said, "Well, how can I help you?" And then she never replied. It's like really weird. It's like just weird. There's no.
I mean, a background. Was she an alien abductee? And
well, this is the thing. That's the other thing that's in the article.
Yeah, I've read a bit about that.
Yeah, if you listen to the interview with Mel Fabregas, she talks about being mother to alien hybrid children that she's never seen. And the weird thing is that she sounds more sincere when she's talking about that than when she's talking about the shenanigans with Lloyd Carr. Her speech is more fluent. It's more relaxed. She's doesn't feel like she's getting angry when she's talking about her hybrid children that she's never seen. But But that again, as I think I said in the article, makes the whole thing even more weird.
Yes, yeah.
Because if she's claiming that she has alien hybrid children, you'd think that she'd be interested in having physical evidence of real aliens existing, even if they're, according to different aliens to, the ones that have fathered hybrid children or whatever, So it's like debunking the skull weakens her own other side of the story that she's giving in this interview. I mean, why? Is it me?
Yeah, it is very, very.
It's extremely weird.
I find it very strange.
And I'm not, Lloyd talked about in some of his talks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticising this idea of people having alien hybrid children, because of course, if you read the literature, Melanie Young is not the only person that talks about this. There are quite a number of people that talk about this. I think the one of the more compelling cases is that of Kim Carlsberg. She spoke at the Exopolitics conference in about 2010 or 2011. She was this photographer that used to work on Baywatch, David Hasselhoff in the program. Kim Carlsberg used to work on that program, I think, as a set photographer or something, doing PR shots and stuff. And she recounted this experience that she was harvested, that she had a fetus, and then she had a fetus in her body, and then it was taken out. And there's several people that have talked about that as well. You can find out about that. It's not an area I've researched much. I've listened to a few broadcasts, but it's something I certainly don't dismiss it. Dismiss it. Yeah. It's one of those things where the evidence seems to be limited, and you'd have to ask somebody like that. Well, do you have an ultrasound scan from when you were pregnant, followed by one when you weren't, with the appropriate dates on to prove that story being true? That's what you need. It's kind of horrible to ask for that sort of thing of something, isn't it? It's very. I wouldn't like to ask for that. So you can only take stories like that at face value often, and listen, just try and see what other details come out that are consistent or inconsistent with others. So I'm not debunking Melanie Young on that ground. But there's something clearly going on. Has she been beamed? Has she had some mental affectation?
Something's happened. Something most definitely. This Fox P2 gene, and in the last supposedly final results, did they say they didn't find it? They didn't look for it. Did they even look for it?
No, they just. If you read this, you can go and read the more recent nuclear DNA test. And from my understanding of it, reading the document, which isn't very long, I think they did just an ordinary test to determine the sex of the human child using the DNA sample that they were given. I think they just test the DNA, tell us what you can about it, and send us a report. Pay them $5,000, whatever they cost to read. So I think that's all they did. Now, the guy that I wrote to, who responded to me, I don't think he did anything wrong. He was just he ran a lab, and he was just doing human DNA testing. There's nothing. He wasn't trying to cover up that this was an alien or anything like that. He wasn't told. He was given a sample of bone or whatever. I don't know, or maybe a part of the tooth. But that was the other problem. You see, I don't know what he was given. I don't know exactly what he was given. He might have even been given not from the skull. They might have given him a sample. Their own skin or something. I don't know. I don't know what he was given.
I was reading the differences. Now, I read that, I don't know if it's either Melanie Young or the Chase
Klowetsky.
They said they didn't find any of the fibres or the residue. Totally going opposite from what Lloyd Carr did before.
Maybe they didn't. I don't know. Let's just say that they sliced up that bone. And for some reason, those fibres have all degraded since 2004, because that's 12 years ago. It's unlikely, but it's possible. So it's possible they might be telling the truth. The bone thickness can't have changed. Back to 9 millimetres.
Exactly.
So there's other factors as well. So
it depends what the views, testing the views.
Right.
To do it.
Or it may be that the part of the bone that they retested didn't have fibres in it, because it was only from a small area. Only a small area has been cut out. So we'd have to know exactly what they did to understand exactly how fraudulent their results were.
There's lots of problems going on within it, anyway, within the discussion since. So, in my mind, it's going to be in a test as well.
And I think just going on a little wider from that, in that one of the things I mentioned last week, I did the Starchild talk just over a couple of weeks ago at Medstead, this conference there. And what I was saying there was that this shenanigans with the Starchild Skull, which to me is the most compelling evidence, physical evidence of alien beings, really, is that how I would say it, or something that looks like an alien being. As I say, it might be another species never discovered on Earth before. Can't say definitely, but it matches for many people. It matches the appearance of a grey alien. It's got the same shaped head, very unusual bones. Some people say that the greys are a biological robot. Well, if this was some type of robot, but it's biological, it's not metal and and gears and all of that stuff. It's actually some type of biological robot. That might explain some of the way it's constructed. It's very strong, etc., etc. Who knows? It didn't appear to have a tongue. May have communicated by telepathy, or just not. Might have had a radio transmitter going into its head. Who knows? Some type of organic radio transmitter that would degrade and disintegrate when the being died. We don't know. We don't know anything about what alien technology might be like. Not in the white world. In the black world they do, but not in the white world. So they tried to stir up the Starchild Skull. And they're getting people like me attacking Melanie Young, Melanie attacking me, Mel Fabregas, blah, 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 loads of upset. Much as I am accused of creating infighting in the 9/11 Truth Movement. Ian Henschel, by the way, he said that I was the biggest single cause of the collapse of the UK 9/11 Truth Movement. That's what he said to me.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
So,
where's my certificate? So, they create infighting conflict, they create a dialectic, people argue, and to me it's quite a strong parallel with what's been going on with the Larry Warren issue, with the Rendlesham case, which has been dragging on for a couple of years. People have now fallen out of that, a lot of acrimony, you're a liar, you've lied, you've done this, you've done that. So what happened at Rendlesham? We don't care about that anymore because Larry Warren is a liar, or not a liar. Larry Warren's telling the truth. Everyone else says he's a liar. And those that are saying that Larry Warren is a liar are liars themselves because he's telling the truth. You get all of that. So what happened at Rendlesham? We've forgotten about that. Thank you very much. And it's saying to the skull, is Melanie Young a liar, or is Andrew Johnson a liar, or Lloyd Carr a liar? What about the actual evidence from them? Judy Woods made stuff up about the towers. Well, did they turn to dust or not?
That's it. It deviates from actual evidence that's already there. Yeah.
So it's the same sort of psychological tactics that are at work, and so there are a number of secrets that these people are really concerned about keeping, and I think that's one of them. And that's one. We've got two of them on the table right here.
Exactly. So. Well, it's some good stuff there. Some good stuff.
Definitely. Can I ask about the Nazca bodies it's like a mummified alien? Is that because it's obviously we've got the I can't talk today, Starchild Skill here, but the body that we found is that also DNA tested? Or?
Are you referring to the one that was like a mummified, like a crouch figure like that, fetal position? Kind of thing? Right. Yeah. I haven't studied that very much. It came to the fore in about June this year, June 2017, and we saw this peculiar picture of this sort of huddled, crouched down figure, and when I saw this I thought, that looks like plaster of Paris to me.
So I thought.
And it was heavily promoted on Facebook, heavily promoted in lots of videos, and the problem for me with it being involved because it was involving Jaime Maussan, who's a little bit of a sensationalist. He has produced some very interesting videos from Mexico, Jaime Maussan. I've collected them together. I've got a couple of his conference DVDs, and he shows some very interesting footage. But he was also caught out with this other little creature that was caught, I think in 2007. It was a live creature, and they allegedly caught it and drowned it. And then they tested the skeleton. It looks like a lizardy type creature. It was only about sort of that big. And they said it was moving, and then somebody captured it. It was a bad look on them, and their house burnt down the next week or something. It was meant to be like a little devil creature or something, and all this went round about time. 2007. But then it turned out that this was a hoax, this thing, apparently, and the guy came out and admitted that it was a hoax. And Jaime Maussan got burned by that, because he'd apparently sold this story for like $20,000 to various media outlets or something. So I digress from this thing that came out in June, the alien. What was it? What was the name of it again?
It was from Nazca, wasn't it?
Nazca, Nazca,
mummy,
yeah.
type thing.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I haven't studied that, but I got the sense that it was a bit of a publicity stunt because it was also being promoted by one of these web TV networks. I can't remember which one it was. Conscious Media or something it was called, and they were promoting this at the time. I haven't seen the evidence that's definitely some type of alien. They haven't done seem to tested the bone. Apparently they were going to do some DNA tests, but I don't know if they did it, and I don't know if they did what the outcome was. If it was proved to be anomalous, I haven't heard about it. Nobody's posted it again on my Facebook group. Nobody's sent me any videos since June.
Okay.
So I suspect it was probably some type of publicity stunt. But again, I could be wrong. Maybe it's been spirited away, and somebody's got hold of it, and it's been spirited away somewhere for all I know. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Are you going to the one? Or,
I think that's it. I think it's covered pretty much all that I had. Yeah.
I was going to ask about has there been any other relics found? Anything else that's been found similar to the Starchild?
One of the things I did mention in the talk, I maybe didn't mention it at Hancock, so I wouldn't have had time, is that there's a chap called Brian Foster, or Forster, I don't know how to pronounce his surname, and he runs this, I think it's called megalithic tours. They go off and they organise these excellent trips to go and see Machu Picchu and the pyramids, and they guide you around all the sites. I'd like to go on one of those trips actually. They're quite expensive, like $3,000 or something. I think it's 2 weeks. I mean, it's not unreasonable considering what they're doing. They're probably making a living off of it, but why not? If they want to do tour guides and be knowledgeable tour guides, I've got no problem with them making a living off that. But what they did show in one of his videos is he'd got this skull that looked like the Starchild skull, and he's got it on his website. And it was thought initially to be another Starchild skull. It looks quite similar in shape, but they put that on the Starchild Project website, and they looked at some of the pictures, and it appears to be. It's just slightly bigger than the palm of your hand. It's actually an in-foot skull. You can see it quite clearly when you look at all the pictures. If you look at one from the wrong angle, you'll see that it looks similar to that.
Okay.
But the Starchild skull. But this is actually the skull of a hydrocephalic child. I'm pretty certain of that. But he's still going around claiming it's another Starchild skull, unfortunately. So I think that's not really a good idea to do that.
So it might, again, throw you off the to the real Starchild skull.
But what I think they have got in that area where he's been doing these tours or near there, is the Baracus skulls. If you look up the Baracus skulls, Paracas, they are very unusual, and Lloyd was aware of those, and he mentioned those in a couple of his talks, and he said that they are similar to the Starchild skull in terms of, not the shape, they're completely different in shape, but they have a cranial capacity of I think 3,000 cc's. Human capacity is 1,200. The Starchild's I think is 1,600. These Baracus skulls are 3,000 cc's. And people think, oh, it's head binding. No, it ain't head binding, folks, because with head binding, you can only change the shape of the skull. You can't increase the volume substantially. You might get maybe like 5 extra cc's or something like that. So that you can only change the shape and just squash the skull slightly, when it's still young at birth and that sort of thing. But these Baracus skulls, they need to be properly studied, like the Starchild skull needs to be studied. And there are one or two you went and did some research. You could probably find enough to find a few more skulls. And they're in these Mexican museums. They haven't really, the archaeologists in Mexico are not a lot different from the ones in North America and Europe. They think, civilization started in Africa, they migrated north to Europe, then they came across to the US, and there were Native Americans there who did various things, and that's basically it. There's Aboriginal people in Australia, which are a bit of a mystery, and there are indigenous people that are probably in South America, but they're a bit of a mystery. But basically, this idea of there being aliens involved now is all rubbish, and that applies, I think, in most of the academic communities across the world. You get a few exceptions, But digressing slightly, but I think it's still relevant. I watched quite an interesting documentary made by a chap who'd been over to the Gujarati area of India, and there's this city a bit north of the Gujarat Peninsula. I think it's called Dharma or Dharka. I forget the name of it now. I should remember this. And it's said to be the city of Krishna, which is one of the Hindu gods in legend. And in the Hindu legend and the writings, there's a talk of this massive attack. That the city of Dharma or Dharka, wherever it is attacked by Krishna's enemy, and he uses these enormous weapons to destroy most of the city. And there's quite a good account of this in the records. But what was discovered, I think, in 1990, is they discovered these archaeological remains, and I think they're 120 feet below the surface of the ocean, just off the coast of where the city is. And when they looked at these remains, it's basically a city under the water.
Wow.
And it's huge. And they actually, the Indian universities got involved for a period of time, and they basically said, one guy actually said, one professor said, this looks like it's Krishna's city, so it looks like the legend as written down is true. He more or less said that in this paper that he'd submitted at the time. But guess what they did? They stopped the archaeological investigation. They stopped it. They stopped it. And this guy who was doing the documentary, I forget his name, he's a US guy. He went to see these two guys at the university, and you could tell they didn't want to talk about it. And he actually said that he went to see one guy to ask him about he wanted to find out why they hadn't done any more archaeological research, or if they had, what had been found. They hadn't done any more. They didn't want to do any more. And then the first guy who went to me, he kind of said, yeah, it's an interesting story, but, But the weird thing was, he went to see another guy who had also worked on it, and then as he was going to see this other guy, he wasn't there. He had to wait till the next day to go and see him. And what he found out was that the other guy that he'd been to see had gone to see the first guy that he'd just come from meeting. At the same time, he'd just been over to see him. So... what's that about, exactly, kind of thing,
Oh, yeah.
So there are other secrets. There is a hidden history of the world.
Yes, definitely.
And, but again, that's like everything else. Like, for example, I have a lot of respect for Graham Hancock, who has written a lot. What he's written, he said that I think he's got some book. He did a series on Channel 4. Called The Flooded Kingdoms of the Ice Age, which was made, I think, in about 1994. Might even be on YouTube now, actually, I don't know. Or you can probably get it on various DVDs. What he's written about is very good in that he reckons there was a civilization around the world that was wiped out about 12,000 years ago. In other words, I think about 10,000 BC. There was some melting of the ice caps or something, or a lot of water came, and the sea level rose by about 400 feet, was it, or 100 metres? I forget the figure he gives, but he goes into quite a lot of detail. And I think that's what I've just told you about the Indian thing. It's probably part of that story. That's why it's now 120 feet under the ocean, because the sea level rose quite suddenly at that time. And there's quite a lot of evidence, and that's where all the flood myths come from. A lot of the religions have flood myths, not just Noah. There's, I think the Hindu religion has a flood myth as well. Again, it's not an area I've researched very deeply. But then again, Graham Hancock, there's certain things he doesn't talk about, like all the links between the Freemasons and the Egyptian symbolism and all that sort of stuff, which I think is clearly tied into that. And I'd read somewhere that the Freemasons, as was founded, were the survivors of Atlantis. They were the people that survived from Atlantis, so they were the survivors after this massive inundation. So the people that have eventually sort of got into Freemasonry, the group that became Freemasonry was started by a group of survivors from the original thing before the time of the Cataclysm, and that's why they've held on to all this esoteric knowledge. And that, because they were an advanced civilization, they knew all this stuff, energy weapons and consciousness. They knew all of that, and that's why they decided they were going to keep that secret for whatever reason. I don't know why, and so they're the secret keepers. And apparently Graham Hancock doesn't talk about that bit. Again, this is sketchy knowledge in my brain, because I've only I haven't read any of Graham Hancock's books, actually. I've only listened to him. I've listened to quite a few of his
I'm
talks.
saying I've listened
Yeah.
to talk.
Yeah, and it's I do like listening to Graham Hancock. I think he's
Mm.
an excellent speaker, and he's an excellent way of presenting things. And some very interesting stuff. But there's, again, he seems to be certain things he misses out, which always concerns me, you know. But hey ho, maybe it's just that he hasn't got time. You know, he fills his time with. So I've just heard these talks. You know, I don't know if you just haven't got time to cover those topics. He's covering other topics. So you know,
could be.
Let's hope in time he does.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's time.
Oh, is it after it's after?
Time flies, isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
Another interesting talk, though. Fantastic.
Definitely. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. Okay, so we'll maybe do another one again sometime if you want. But,
Yes, definitely.
well,
Absolutely.
I'll say thank you very much now.
And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.